Welcome back. Welcome back. We're going up until 9 o'clock, at which time we will conclude the broadcast here for today, Wednesday. You notice our motto says that Wagwan Massive, just with such high energy, it complements our vibe here on the platform. Good morning to all of our viewers in the diaspora, particularly our friends in the United States of America. Many of you voted yesterday, on that Democratic ticket. We'll give you an update before we leave at 9 on the results. Still coming in. We're following the polls with Reuters this morning. Say hi to our friends in the Commonwealth of Dominica as well. Large following over there. Good morning to our friends in Goodwill, Dominica, our viewers in Goodwill, Dominica. Hi to everybody who's watching in Tarish Pit, Purple City. Jolly Lane, good morning. Thank you for tuning in to us here in St. Lucia. We're sending vibes and sunrise your way. Warmth and all of that on this Wednesday morning, Dominica. Thank you so much for tuning in. Interesting turn of events in your neck of the woods when you think everything was nice and smooth post the World Creole Music Festival. Back to the polls come the 6th of December. The Prime Minister of that country, the Honorable Roosevelt Skerrit, he and his Dominica Labour Party, they were in the heart of Roseau last evening at the stadium grounds for his presentation of candidates under the theme Still the Best for Dominica. 10 new faces form part of that slate of candidates. 10 former MPs will no longer contest elections. According to the Prime Minister, they taking the decision to make a departure from active politics. Let's hear from the man himself in his own words, and then I move across to Roseau, where our Dominican journalist is already standing by. But now we hear from Prime Minister Roosevelt Skerrit on his way to the polls again come December the 6th.
As a consequence of their inability to rally together as one organization and support a single individual as leader of their party. They were rumbling chaotically along toward November 27th party conference, at which no less than 6 persons had declared an intention to run for leadership. The conference on November 27 was not going to unite them. It was going to further divide them. Everyone they had approached to join the party as a candidate was joining on condition of becoming the leader of the party. And so, my friends, the decision not to contest was not taken after no vote on electoral reform. Let me give you the real background to their pullout from contesting the elections. I called a meeting last evening of the 10 new candidates who will be joining Labour in this election. And so, the 10 new candidates, we met last night with some of the outgoing members of the Parliament and with our senior advisors. We met at a public space. We met the 10 new candidates in a public space. Someone took note of all who entered that building and all who left that building. And then they relayed that to the Workers' Party. And when they saw the names of people who were going to run, they decided, no way, we cannot beat those candidates, and therefore we're not going to contest elections. That is why they're not running. They know they could not win a single seat in enough of Dominica. They know they cannot test us in the south of Dominica. They know they cannot test us in the west of Dominica. And when they believed they had a little glimmer of hope in the east, when that woman who wanted to be leader of the Workers' Party from Lapland saw the name that is going to run in the Lapland constituency, she said, well, I feel bad. I cannot win that seat because that candidate for the Lapland constituency will be a formidable and is a formidable candidate for Labour in this election. So my friends, don't buy that nonsense about electoral reform. Don't buy that. That is a bunch of nonsense they're talking about. They're not ready. You have no leader. You have no policies. You have no programs. You have no friends. And you can't make even a little drink in a bar when you go in a constituency. Which job party are you talking about? Which party are you talking about? Labour is the only organized party in the Commonwealth. We are the only organized party in the Commonwealth, my dear friends. They came, Workers' Party came, or they lost by 8,000 or so votes last election. But if they were hard-working men and women, if they were interested in people, they could do better this time around. But they're not serious. And so Lennox Linton led them for the last 3 years. 3 years, and then got vexed and left the cockpit when he heard of the sort of people that were being recruited to replace him. That is why he said they backstab him, they crooked him, ladies and gentlemen. With who gets up and leaves the leadership of a political party 3 years after an election? Who does that? Who does that? And so, ladies and gentlemen, this election is a serious time. We have, as Labour Party, to secure the future of this country, the well-being of Dominica. And so, let us not get confused by them. We have work to do, ladies and gentlemen. You know, we caught them with their pants and underwear down. We caught them with their pants and underwear down, ladies and gentlemen. And you know, it was not only down, it was completely off. And they cannot recover from this. The UWP tonight is as naked as it was born. No policy, no philosophy, no ideas, no presence on the ground, no money to buy even a drink in a shop for anybody who they meet in a shop. And so, ladies and gentlemen, let us remain focused on Dominica and what we need to do for our country. So tell the Workers' Party for me tonight to stop their damn nonsense about they're not running because of a report on electoral reform. That is not true. They marched up and down for the last 3 months demanding election. Every Wednesday they in Roosevelt, Skerrit call election, Skerrit call it. When Skerrit call the election, they're saying they're not running for election. Well, if you are not ready, then don't come and talk to me about your problems. That is your problem, Workers' Party. That's your problem. That's your problem. We are ready, and we are ready to continue the advancement of Dominica for the benefit of the people of Dominica. And so, ladies and gentlemen, if they don't want to contest, then so be it. I have led a party in parliament with 18 seats, and I am prepared to run a parliament with all 21 seats. So, it's okay. Nobody will miss them anyway. It's a bunch of lazy men and women looking for a salary every month, no work. So if they want to run, okay. But we will take all the 21 seats, all of them. So my friends, and I am warning them tonight. I am warning them tonight that that nonsense they did last election and blocking streets and burning streets, let me say to them that we will not sit down and take that nonsense again in Dominica. That nonsense will not happen in our country. This lawless behavior.
Very energized Prime Minister Honorable Roosevelt Skerrit speaking last evening during his presentation of candidates. We'll talk about some of the new faces in just a bit, but sending a clear warning to his rival opposition United Workers' Party that the government of the day, the government of Dominica, will not tolerate the sort of anarchy and chaos which we saw on the streets of Roseau in 2019 ahead of the polls there. Joining me now via the Flow video platform, Dominican journalist who has a keen interest and who is observing what's happening on the ground in Dominica, Mr. Loftus Durand. Loftus, good morning. Thanks for waking up and thanks for agreeing to come on.
Well, good morning, Mr. LeBon, and to your many viewers and listeners.
Yes, nice to have you on. Let's start off. Lots of political rhetoric. Obviously, those in attendance last evening were supporters of the Prime Minister. What's the true energy and feeling on the ground in Roseau and across the Commonwealth now? What are people saying on the heels of the snap election?
Well, just before I go to what the mood of the people is on the ground is in Dominica as we speak, really snap election called by Roosevelt Skerrit. I want to be straight up with you and your viewers and listeners and tell you that from how I see it and many persons see it in Dominica, that the man, Roosevelt Skerrit, is a very politically dishonest and deceptive man. That is how I want to start my comments here with you.
Excellent. Why dishonest first?
Dishonesty because there are many situations that Roosevelt Skerrit was caught, as it were, with his hand in the cookie jar. We know that in Dominica, and a number of persons in the region know certain situations. One situation, for example, many years ago, his government was basically caught red-handed, whereby that scandal was named the bean bubble scandal, whereby certain factions of his government had to pay back money to the treasury, basically deceiving the Dominicans of monies in some kind of scandal as known as the bean bubble scandal, rubbish bean scandal in Dominica. And the list can go on and on, but in the interest of time, I just want to start with this one. So it's on that premise that I said he's politically dishonest and as well a very deceptive brother politically.
Okay, how comes he continues to hold the reins of power? He continues to be re-elected, even as you say, being caught with his hands in the cookie jar on several occasions.
Well, when it is alleged that you are, as a man or as an individual, dabbling in certain things that are not good, especially in the spiritual realm, and also you are known to be bribing and treating individuals before, during, and even after general elections, then that will lend itself in a very wholesome way to you remaining in power.
He's called snap elections 2 years ahead of the constitutionally due deadline. What's the mood like, the real honest mood on the ground amongst your citizens?
Basically, you have two factions in Dominica. Dominica is basically split between red and blue. And red and blue meaning the political parties in Dominica. The Dominica Labour Party, which Roosevelt Skerrit is the leader of, and also the United Workers' Party, which is now going through a transition in terms of its leadership. If you talk to any one person in Dominica based on their political leanings, then you will get a different response. What I can tell you is that those who are in support of the Dominica Labour Party, they will tell you that things are good, things are okay, and the government of the day, they have done and continue to do an excellent job. On the contrary, if you talk to someone else who is not in support or is not in the corner of the incumbent government, then you'll be hearing a totally different picture in terms of the doom and gloom situation as it pertains to the economy, as it pertains to healthcare, as it pertains to agriculture, and the list will go on and on. You'll be getting a totally different picture of the handling where the mismanagement of Dominica is concerned.
Yeah. But do you get a sense that many of your citizens are surprised and shocked even that elections have been called so early again?
Well, lots of persons, even those who are in support of the incumbent, they too, they are surprised at a man in the name of Roosevelt Skerrit calling an election 2.5 years into his political mandated cycle. A lot of persons are wondering exactly why that happened. If you have the majority in government as he has, 18 seats to the Dominica Labour Party to 3 seats to the United Workers' Party. One is asking the question exactly why. He gave reasons which really doesn't add up, citing COVID and the country needs to be on a reset mode. But basically, if you're resetting to something to better. No one resets anything for the worse or even the same. And what we have witnessed in the past, just before the 2019 general election, the team or half of the team that he dashed aside, especially the senior ministers, he said to the Dominican public back then that that was the best team, the best thing, as it were, after sliced bread. And this time again, he also dashed another 10 and basically saying the same rhetoric that this team now in 2022, it is the better team for Dominica. And we have to ask ourselves exactly why this brother keeps fooling the Dominican public time and times over.
Yeah, he's even gone further this time around last evening, saying that this new team is the best team that you would find anywhere in the world. Those were his exact remarks. What do you think? What do you think is his real agenda? Because you're not buying the reasons that he's coughing up.
Well, the best team in the world, then Roosevelt Skerrit is living in a mind of his own. This guy is living in a bubble. He's far from reality. He's far from the realistic situations on the ground. You have a situation in Dominica, for example, take healthcare in Dominica. Gone are the days when Dominica was one of the countries in the Caribbean region, for example, where other residents would fly to Dominica for healthcare services. Gone are those days. Basic things in our hospital, now you cannot get in terms of medication. Basic surgeries to be performed on individuals who find themselves in these situations where their health is concerned, they have to be flown out. And so the management of the country, especially where healthcare is concerned, is much to be desired. In the area of agriculture, agriculture is basically on its back in Dominica. Gone are the days when banana, as we know in Dominica, was king, and lots and loads of people was benefiting from that resource. We are no longer, as a country, able to deal with our citizenry in terms of the whole hopefulness and inspiration as it pertains to young people. You have violence is on the increase. A lot of persons, they are leaving the country in droves, and that is as a result of the mismanagement, as I said, of his government that he's leading for the past 15, 16 years in Dominica. There's a state of disarray in the country, and I cannot paint it any better to you and your listeners as to exactly the state of which we are in Dominica. And added to that, a snap election has been called, and he gives all sorts of other reasons why he went into that snap election mode, but not giving the people the real and true situation on the ground that the Dominican public have been facing in terms of his dismal performance.
Yeah, thanks for painting that picture for us, because I know your Prime Minister would say, look at the new hospital that I just built, look at the CIP receipts, but thanks for painting that picture. You're on the ground in Roseau. What is your prediction going into the December 6 polls? Do you expect people to turn out in large numbers to vote? Do you expect people to take to the streets to protest? Because the opposition have said that they're not going to be part of this election.
Well, a matter of fact, Roosevelt Skerrit made the announcement last Sunday. And up till now, I'm still waiting to hear the buzz whenever an election is called in any part of the world. There is no buzz. There's nothing exciting happening on the ground in Dominica. A matter of fact, he made the announcement Sunday night, and Monday morning it was like business as usual. People are basically just going about their daily business as if nothing happened. This time around, I can tell you, our elections have been very low in terms of its attendance and participation. And this year, with the official opposition parties not participating, they made that position clear, then it will even be lower, and maybe it will be within the range of 20% voter turnout, 25%, 30% voter turnout. But that is the stark reality on the ground. We have been clamoring, we have been fighting in Dominica for, figuratively speaking, that is, for a freer and fairer framework for this electoral process that we are deemed to go into on December 6th.
Yeah.
The Prime Minister have not facilitated the process. We have an electoral commission in Dominica that tried and keep trying at least to do something, but he keeps standing in the way in terms of making those things a reality. We also had in 2019, before the sham general election, where it was rigged, the OAS, the CARICOM, and the Commonwealth Secretariat, Roosevelt Skerrit, invited them to Dominica to help us in terms of making that process free and fairer. Even before these people, these august organizations came in with their report and tabled it, he came out swinging through the mouth of the Attorney General and said to the Dominican people, one, that these recommendations by these bodies, they were too expensive. Two, they would cause much confusion. And the third being that it doesn't come to mind now, but basically he gave 3 solid reasons that these recommendations could not take place.
Okay.
Here on the hills again, brother, Dennis Byron. I guess you heard of Dennis Byron.
Absolutely.
He, Roosevelt Skerrit again, through this one-manism in Dominica, contracted Dennis Byron, and on the heels of a draft report, he called a snap election. So it is just like a slap in the face of everybody, every time, as it pertains to free and fair elections.
Yeah, I was going to go there with the Dennis Byron report, which he has laid out a schedule for starting to present it by the first phase in November. And I wanted to ask you whether or not you think your Prime Minister is a bit fearful of the recommendations of Sir Byron. We'll go there in just a bit. But you don't anticipate people to protest heading into the December 6th general election?
Excuse me, I didn't get that question.
You don't anticipate people to protest heading into the general election?
Well, what I know, in any functioning democracy, the people have the power. Mm-hmm. And where a people's back is pressed for so long that the people have the right to resist in terms of protest action. And so, yes, I have been hearing that persons will resist, persons will exercise the democratic right by saying that what the process that we have been engaged in or asked to be engaged in again is just a sham.
Right.
And they will have none of it, and they will continue to stand for their rights as it pertains to at least giving them the chance to partake in something that is meaningful to them in terms of casting the ballot.
Right. Do you expect him this time around to invite the international observers and with the opposition non-participation, with again an election, no electoral reform? What do you think will the observers say to what's happening now in Dominica?
Well, I don't know if he will invite the observers, but to me, it makes very little sense or no sense at all to invite any observer mission team to Dominica, because these observer missions have been here ever so often, and they keep producing reports that speak to the falsities, the unfairness, the dishonesty, the lack of transparency, and everything that goes into our elections. And they keep making recommendations ever so often. And none of these recommendations, absolutely none, not one of these recommendations have been adopted by the Electoral Commission first, and also facilitated by the incumbent, which Roosevelt Skerrit leads. So to me, it's like basically going to the well ever so often with a bucket with holes in the bottom, and expecting every time to bring back home some water. Yeah. That is an exercise in futility, if you ask me.
One of the recommendations coming from the observer missions every time is for Dominica to seriously pursue electoral reform, especially along the lines of voter registration. How big is that an issue on the minds of Dominicans? Because we understand now, and even before, you could just show up on election day and say, I'm Loftus Durand, and you can vote under that name. Is that the case?
Well, the situation for free and fair elections in Dominica in terms of reformation of this process, it has passed due. Unlike your guest before, Peter Wickham, the pollster, I listened to him basically trying to downplay that situation in Dominica, where elections after elections have been rigged because we in Dominica don't have a free and fair process. You in St. Lucia, Mr. LeBon, the people in St. Kitts and Nevis, the people in Antigua, the persons in St. Vincent, though you guys may not have it 100%, but there is something that you guys can hold on to safeguard your democracy. In Dominica, we have nil, we have nothing. And when I heard Peter Wickham came to you this morning and want to give you the impression and the world impression that UK, for example, doesn't have an ID card. Certain parts in America in terms of the voting system doesn't have an ID card. This is being very intellectually dishonest, because Peter Wickham knows the situation on the ground in Dominica, that persons have impersonated persons when they vote with their finger in that ink. Then all they do normally sometimes is go home and rub off that ink. They put oil on their finger so that the ink doesn't really stay. So there are a lot of shenanigans that goes on in Dominica as it pertains to a free and fair process. And the Dominican public will continue to clamor for that day when at least we can join our brothers and sisters in this region to have a semblance of free and fair electoral system in Dominica.
So Dennis Byron was working on a system of electoral reform. He was commissioned by your Prime Minister, paid through the office of the Prime Minister by taxpayers' dollars to do this job. He wrote to Lennox Linton on Sunday, the 6th of November, the very same day the Prime Minister called the election. Your Prime Minister would have received the letter before the 6th. Our sources say he would have received the letter around the 1st of November, thereabout. Are you suspicious that based on what and the direction Sir Byron was heading, he wanted to table the first part of the report in November, have Parliament see it and table it in December? Are you concerned that based on the direction Sir Byron was headed, your Prime Minister was not in support of the reform process and decided to preempt the report by Sir Dennis Byron?
Again, I will go back to my opening statements in response to your answer, in response to your question, sorry. Roosevelt Skerrit, the man, and mark my words, I'm not calling him a leader because leaders, true leaders, don't behave in that form and fashion. Roosevelt Skerrit is a very dishonest, politically speaking, and a very deceptive brother. Here it is, with the latest scenario of bringing about Sir Dennis Byron, which was a former president of the CCG, in terms of the legal aspect of things in our region. He single-handedly singled out Dennis Byron to make recommendations as to a way forward for our electoral process in Dominica. Here it is, on the heels of this brother providing a draft of his recommendation, this political, dishonest, and deceptive man will basically abort that process that Dennis Byron has been engaging with him for 2 years plus and basically call a snap election. So we are asking in Dominica, is it a slap in the face of, again, another attempt at someone in the name of Dennis Byron to help us in Dominica, like he did on previous occasions? We're asking that all-important question. So when we see these things being displayed in Dominica, Roosevelt Skerrit can only be classified for who he is. And that is, I will repeat, he's a very politically dishonest and deceptive man. And the people in the region, in terms of leaders in the region, and even across the world, they have to watch and take Roosevelt Skerrit for who he is. And he's not supposed to be trusted at any cost at all.
We heard from him a short while ago, very, very energized last evening in Roseau. I'll play some excerpts from your Prime Minister again before we end. Talk to us about his new suite of candidates, the best team, according to him, anywhere in the world for the Times. Who's new on the ballot paper this time around, and what did they bring to the table based on your opinion?
In 2019, it was the best thing out of space as well. In 2022, just 2.5 years into his mandate, his fraudulent mandate, I must add, again, he's coming with that same old political rhetoric. It is the best thing. Basically, what I saw in terms of the changes, it is nothing but, as the saying goes, old wine in a new bottle. What I can say is that most of these people are much more youthful, and Dominicans would by nature suggest that because of their youthfulness, there will be a new energy. But Roosevelt keeps getting away ever so often with basically thrashing persons on the side after they serve the country. And Mr. LeBon, I'm going to make a pronouncement there to you this morning. And maybe you will get back to me in the not too distant future to let me expound on what I'm saying when it truly materializes. Roosevelt Skerrit, in terms of his attitude and his posture towards just shuffling up people in that deck of cards, as it were, where his candidate is concerned, and he seems not to be shuffling himself or be prepared to shuffle himself and his wife we are looking at a situation in Dominica where, like Zimbabwe under Robert Mugabe, then, he and his wife basically control Zimbabwe. We are looking at a situation where if the Dominican public don't take stock of what is happening and do something about that situation, you guys as journalists may be reporting that we have a Mugabe-like situation in Dominica where Roosevelt Skerrit and his wife, Melissa, is concerned. And finally, I will tell you, the people will resist that, and it will not be a very pleasant day for Dominica. It will not. It will not.
Finally, from me to you, Mr. Durand, and we'll keep monitoring once these developments unfold. We'll report on them and contact you as you initiated. Finally, from me, Mr. Durand, your Prime Minister was here on St. Lucia recently, within the last month. He's a close ally to our ruling St. Lucia Labour Party, and he addressed the recent party congress under the theme Protecting the Victory. Based on the shenanigans, according to you, and the dealings of your Prime Minister, how worried should St. Lucians, if at all, be of his association with our ruling St. Lucia Labour Party here?
Well, Mr. LeBon, what I'm seeing in the region unfolding is that the Labour parties in our region, they have been consolidating their forces. And though on one side of the spectrum that may be good for their organizations, on the other side of the spectrum that is certainly not good, in that we are seeing unfolding before our very eyes a sort of very deceptive move by the Labour parties in the region, whereby they tend to, as Roosevelt Skerrit did, Mia Motley did it earlier, and we will see that show up its head if we don't take stock, that this quote-unquote snap election situations cannot augur well for democracies. If I should just use some of the words of Dr. Hines, Christiana Hines, that's a political scientist in Barbados, when Mia Motley called that snap election. Basically, I'm not quoting her now, but she said these situations where politicians have dates running in their back pocket and can use it to their whims and fancies to stay in power, it cannot augur well for thriving democracies in our region. And I hope to see the day that when we as one people in the region can hold politicians accountable and let democracy and democratic principles reign, because we cannot continue as that. It cannot be that sort of plantation style of governance that we once knew that is showing up its ugly head again. The winner takes all, and the majority will have this.
Loftus will talk again. I say, and the losers will cry again for 5 years.
Well, that is the idea. Yeah. That is the new phenomenon in the region. And so I pray to God that one day, someday, pretty soon, that we as a people will wake up in the region and see what is happening and be prepared to do something about it.
Yeah, there's obviously a trend. The Dominica Labour Party, the lost Mia Motley's Barbados Labour Party in Jamaica, Andrew Holness's Jamaica Labour Party, they all went that route of quick and snap elections. And the date, December the 6th, December the 6th is not a date just out the envelope. That date is synonymous with elections in our region. So a few interesting factors to look into.
Well, I'm glad you're taking note, Mr. Lowe. You're a wise brother.
Loftus, thanks for coming in. Thanks for coming on this morning. We'll come back to you again. Loftus Durand, a journalist over in the Commonwealth of Dominica, coming on this morning to discuss the recent political developments over in the Nature Isle. Dan, we still have that video from Prime Minister Skerrit from last evening. Let's continue with some of it now, and then we will come back to share some feedback on the WhatsApp platform. A lot of discussion on what's happening in Dominica. You can also call us in 5840600, 5840600. our WhatsApp line. Let's continue to hear from Prime Minister Roosevelt Skerrit, who continues to declare that Dominica is Skerrit country. Thank you.
As a consequence of their inability to rally together as one organization and support a single individual as leader of their party. They were rumbling.
We wanted to continue with Prime Minister Skerrit's around 3 hours, 3 minutes, and 55 seconds thereabout, or a bit lower down. That's the time code. Let's review some feedback now on the Facebook platform. Somebody's asking, Shannon, can you request for Sir Dennis Byron to come on? You're thinking just like us. We have a copy of his letter to Mr. Linton. My co-producer, I know you identified like me that Mr. Byron's number is listed on the letterhead of that letter to Mr. Linton, and it's my interest to get him on as well. You'd have an interesting perspective to share. So thanks for that. Let me say hello to Fenella Wenham. Fenella Wenham is, oh no. Those are the new candidates, I think. Yeah. I will go through them in just a bit. I have the video of your